health of our planet. I would also encourage you to ensure that the Department of Energy steps up and becomes an advocate for energy supply within the councils of our government. It seems that in these past years, we've seen other agencies that have been successful in taking resources off the table, regardless of the long-term consequences for the American people. Now, one of the biggest challenges facing the Secretary of Energy is the management of a large and very complex organization with thousands of employees and tens of thousands of contractors. Now, I do not subscribe to the view that only a scientist can manage other scientists. Instead, I think what we need is a good manager. We need a manager to manage all these scientists, one who acknowledges, maybe I don't know everything in that space, but being capable of organizing, setting direction, imposing accountability, making the greatest possible use of taxpayer dollars, and reaching goals. Governor Perry, as the longest-serving governor of Texas, you have considerable experience leading a big and a very sophisticated enterprise. I believe that that will serve you well as secretary, and look forward to hearing how you would carry that experience over to the department. If you are confirmed, you will also find yourself in a position to make the department run more effectively. Secretary Moniz, I think, has made some very good progress in breaking down some of the silos that have historically frustrated the department, but I think we all recognize that there is more that can be done. Offices within the department must do a better job working together to utilize limited resources and reduce unnecessary duplication. I know that in our conversation you made a commitment to travel to my state. I'm sure that as you have visited with other members, you have made similar commitments to them, but I do appreciate your willingness to come to Alaska to see my home state firsthand. And while the Department of Interior is usually the one that makes the headlines in Alaska, the Department of Energy is also very important. And perhaps three key ways that I can point out to you this morning. The first is what the department can do to help reduce extremely high energy costs in the state of Alaska. Our energy costs are the greatest challenge facing our rural areas. Many of our communities are still reliant on diesel as their primary energy source. And in many of the small interior communities, again, inaccessible by road, you get a barge twice a year. They may be experiencing fuel prices in the range of $9, $10 a gallon for their fuel. It's not sustainable. It simply does not work. It's a huge burden, and what ultimately can happen is you have families that just say, we can't live here. We can't stay in a village, in a region that we have been in for 1,000 years, because the energy costs are driving them away. And so they leave their villages and they go to town, Anchorage, Fairbanks, but it really is not the right choice. I think our challenge should be to help them find those energy solutions. And this is where I think we in Alaska can offer a great deal of opportunity, because we have been innovative because of necessity. And we have a lot to share, we think, with the rest of the country in terms of demonstrating how we can find energy solutions very locally. We have more microgrids and more to talk about in that microgrid space than anywhere else in the country. And so I ask you to use that expertise. I think the Department of Energy has some great opportunity to partner with communities and organizations, not only in Alaska, but around the country, to develop real solutions, particularly with renewable energy that can help reduce our energy costs. I've told you that I think that Alaska can be that proving ground, and we look at it and say, if you've got new technologies that make sense somewhere else, we can pretty much guarantee that they'll make sense in Alaska, and then we're the beneficiary because we see the reduced costs. I want to see the department make a much greater effort to capitalize on that going forward. The second way the department can work with Alaska is to help us bring our stranded natural gas to market. Last year, the department granted a conditional export license to the Alaska Gas Line project, but we have to continue receiving good, strong support and timely approvals from the federal government if the project is going to succeed. Finally, the Department of Energy can help Alaska commercialize more of its vast resource base. The Office of Fossil Energy has focused almost exclusively on the environmental aspects of fuels in these recent years, but its mission is supposed to be considerably broader than that. A renewed focus on pre-competitive research on methane hydrates and other resources could lead to new breakthroughs and boost our nation's energy security long into the future. I do think it is important to recognize that this committee, which has a reputation of working collaboratively in a good bipartisan way, Senator Cantwell and I have, along with our colleagues, been able to move the ball forward on some very important energy issues. And we've been able to do that in part with the Department of Energy because we've had a good relationship, positive relationship with the current Secretary of Energy, Ernie Moniz. I think he has done well as Secretary, and while I didn't always agree with him, it was a working relationship that was solid, and there was good respect. And I hope that in that respect, you will follow his lead there, working with us, making yourself available to us, whether to testify here, to just keep in contact, stay in touch, generally be responsive to our members here. And if you can do that, I think you'll be on the right track, and we'll work together as we seek to maintain America's energy leadership. So again, I thank you for being here this morning and your willingness to serve, and I now turn to Ranking Member Cantwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome, Governor Perry. Welcome to your family. Congratulations on your nomination. In case you may have forgotten, you once called for the abolishment of this agency. I suspect that now, having had a chance to learn about the importance of this department, you have a very different opinion. The department, as the chair just pointed out, plays an essential role in protecting our national security, our economic security, our energy security, and our environmental security. And its wide-ranging mission impacts almost every aspect of our lives. The Department of Energy is a science and technology powerhouse, and it is unrivaled as a network in national laboratories, accelerating innovation, and certainly helping us with our U.S. manufacturing base stay competitive. The Department of Energy has helped make the United States a world leader, in addition, in clean energy and energy efficiency technology, and there are now more people working in installing solar panels in the country than there are working in coal and oil and gas extraction. The Department of Energy has built and maintained our nuclear deterrent, led the science and technology development, and continued to guide our ongoing non-proliferation efforts, manage the nuclear weapons complex, such as Hanford, and help us win World War II and the Cold War. So it is very important that we talk today about our steadfast determination on cleanup at Hanford, and I'll get into that more. As also, our threats to our national security continue to evolve, the Department of Energy's mission has to evolve. As the quadrennial review was done by the Secretary of the Obama administration, Secretary Moniz, cybersecurity and emergency responses are critical. Just as the Advanced Research Agency helped us in the development of the Internet, it is now time for ARPA-E to help us in the wired economy of the future and making sure that it is well protected. It will be the job of the next Energy Secretary to be a good overseer of these enterprises, to maintain the achievements of the past 40 years and help the U.S. in its increasing competitive global marketplace on clean energy technologies and protect the grid from these growing threats of cybersecurity. Leading our national labs is going to be a critical aspect of this leadership, and leading the R&D is paramount. It is our job today to consider how well you will do that job. So like many of my colleagues, I am deeply concerned the things that you have said in the past about climate science, and we will get into that in more detail. I believe it is the consensus of the scientific community that climate change is real, that it is happening now, and it is due to human activity. Yesterday, NASA just announced that 2016 was the warmest year on record. In the Arctic, where warming is happening faster than any place on Earth, the melting of sea ice is now at an all-time high. How do we know all of this? We know because the Department of Energy does the research. So we want to make sure that climate science in the Arctic is not just something the Department of Energy and its national laboratories and university partners are doing, but that people understand that it's not just an academic pursuit, but we need the information for very important decisions. The nature and the pace of these changes have serious impacts for the Department of Defense and investments in the kind of infrastructure we need to stand up in the Arctic. We are, I know the chair would agree with this, we are an Arctic nation. And that means that this part of the world is going to be coveted by many nations. Its shipping lanes, its trade routes, its defense issues are going to be central. So, as Senator Murkowski could also tell you, the implication for Arctic communities and their way of life is also impacted. In my state alone, our fisheries industry and the shellfish industry were almost devastated by ocean acidification. So the Department of Energy's scientific horsepower is key to understanding these trends. So I hope that you can understand that there is widespread anxiety about President-elect Trump's intention to dismantle scientific capabilities or simply just starve these resources. We hope that you, Governor Perry, will be someone who understands and believes in the science mission of this agency and will lead it to the best of your abilities. Mission innovation, which is the priority of this agency in continuing to move forward on renewable energy, is also critically important. Almost 2 million Americans work in energy efficiency alone, driving double-digit savings to consumers by these advancements. Our quadrennial review estimates that we need 1.5 million new energy jobs by 2030, which will be grid modernization and clean energy related. So what we have seen through the innovation that has happened through Sandia, NREL, Lawrence Berkeley, many University of Washington, many private sector individuals, is that the cost of utility solar has dropped 64% since 2008, which has caused solar energy last year to lead all forms of energy and new capacity installation in the U.S. We have seen energy efficiency in buildings give back billions to consumers in savings. More than 115,000 electric vehicles were sold in 2015, doubling the amount of 2012. And the DOE's EERE office helped bring down the cost of EVs through better research on battery technologies. So all of these energy innovations rely on the important investments that are made by the Department of Energy and the labs that support them. So the choice before us, in my opinion, Governor Perry, is pretty clear. The Trump administration can either cling to the fossil fuel industry of the past or continue to lead on the innovations that are going to be the lead technologies in the world and put the U.S. at a clear leadership position. I hope that you will understand that these missions are so important. Along with that is also the mission of nuclear waste cleanup, which is between 10 and 15% of the agency's budget. The science and technology that underpins our ability to clean up here is critically important, as well as protect us against non-proliferation. And as I mentioned earlier, the quadrennial review could not be more clear on the urgency of cybersecurity. In light of recent revelations about Russian hacking, the Secretary of Energy needs to take very seriously the threats to this nation in our electricity grid. We are becoming more and more and more a wired economy. My constituents spend night and days developing new technologies. They deserve a president and an energy secretary who are going to take the threats of Russian hacking seriously and defend us against them. I hope that we can go into more detail and questions about this, but I want to make sure that you understand that the past Energy Secretary is leaving you with a roadmap for cybersecurity. I hope you will take it and provide the leadership that our nation needs to stop our vulnerabilities against something so important as protecting the innovation economy of the future for incessant attacks by foreign entities. With that, and on behalf of the 15,000 Washington workers that work at Hanford and PNNL Labs, I hope that you will take what we've said here today about science, innovation, and investment very seriously. I look forward to asking you questions, and again, congratulations on being nominated for this important agency. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cantwell. At this time, we will ask Senator Cornyn to provide his introduction of the nominee, and when Senator Cornyn has completed his comments, we'll turn to you, Senator Manchin, and then we will proceed to hear from Governor Perry. Welcome, Senator Cornyn.
Thank you, Chairman Murkowski, Ranking Member Cantwell, colleagues. Thank you for holding this hearing to consider the nomination of my friend, Governor Rick Perry, to be Secretary of the Department of Energy, and allowing me the opportunity of introducing him. I want to just also introduce his wife, Anita, who is here today. He has his extended family, including some of his adopted family, here with him today, and I'll let him introduce the rest of them. But I got to know Sandy and I, my wife, and I got to know Rick and Anita when we both ran for statewide office in 1990. It's been a few years now. Rick had already served in the Air Force, and he'd served in the state legislature before being elected as Agriculture Commissioner in Texas. I got elected to the Texas Supreme Court that same year. And of course, later in December of 2000, Rick assumed the office of governor of the state of Texas, becoming, as the Chairman Murkowski noted, the longest-serving governor in our state. Serving in public office alongside of someone that long gives you a chance to assess their character and their abilities. I'm here to say that I know Governor Perry to be a tremendous leader of the highest caliber and a dedicated public servant who is committed to working on behalf of the people of Texas and now on behalf of the nation. Rick Perry is not a status quo kind of guy. He's a leader. He's an innovator. Texans are, by nature, practical people looking for solutions to problems. And Rick has led in that spirit, and I believe the results in our state speak for themselves. We've been blessed by the leadership of Governor Perry. During his tenure, the state thrived, even as much of the rest of the country languished. Texas not only added almost 2 million jobs during his time in office, but was responsible for the lion's share of all job growth across the nation from 2007 to 2014. It's really a remarkable statistic. While he was governor,